Hi, welcome to chair yoga. So find your chair with preferably one without sides. And today, see if you can find a block. If you have a yoga block, that's great. If you have something that might be about the same size, I happen to have a cardboard box that would work well. You could also use a book, although that might be a little heavy. And if you don't have anything that looks like these things, another option would be to grab a small weight so that for some of the things that we do with the block, you could also be just having a little bit of that heftiness as well. So we use the block mostly with this length, this longest width. And so if you have something that is that size, that'll work great. And we'll also use the block as a little bit of a weight as well. You can start by finding your comfortable seat. I'm going to turn to the sides. So knees pretty much over the ankles. And you might take your block and now on a narrower side, or whatever you're using, and place that between your thighs, whatever kind of is going to be comfortable. If you want to take it out a wider setting, that would work too. So take a moment to get situated, knees over the ankles, feet planted firmly down on the ground, shoulders stacked over the hips, and try not to let the low back just collapse back into the chair. Can you really press into the feet, really sit up nice and tall, tilt the pelvis a little bit forward. And the hands can rest on the lap. You might start to close the eyes. You might soften the gaze. You might take a little sigh. Maybe a couple more of those as you need. And if you've closed the eyes or you're softening the gaze, maybe that helps you to begin to pay more attention to how you're doing, how the body feels, checking in with the breath. We just start by noticing, trying not to judge or label anything you're finding as good or bad. It is. Take a couple of really long, slow, deep breaths here. See if you can breathe in nice and deep. Breathe out fully empty. Maybe the exhalation's out of the mouth. Breathing in, expanding. Breathing out, softening. Breathing in, the whole rib cage gets a little bigger, takes up more space. Exhale, the shoulders soften, the jaw softens. Inhale, lightly press into the feet or the seat. Maybe you grow a little taller. And exhale, release. Couple more big breaths on your own here, paying attention. You might check in to see if there's a reason that you're here to move, to breathe a little more deeply. Maybe there's an intention or dedication for this time that you have. It could be for yourself, someone, something else. And start to move the body. You might keep the eyes really soft or the gaze closed. The hands could stay on the lap. Some rounds of cat and cow. You could even keep whatever's block is in between the legs, maybe adjust it a little. Your inhale, letting the belly button come towards the thighs, slightly opening across the heart. The elbows can hug softly into the sides. Exhale, start to round the spine. Let the chin come into the chest as much as feels okay. Now the back can come towards the seat of the chair, the back of the chair. Inhale, tilt up. The pelvis tilts a little bit. The heart opens, belly soft towards the legs. Exhale, round the spine, chin into the chest. And you could be moving a little bit faster or a little slower. Inhale, opening up. This is our cow shape, this heart opening. Exhale, curling in our big kind of cat shape. Inhale, maybe the hands slide up towards the root of the hips, the hip crease, top of the thighs. Exhale, slide the hands down towards the knees. Maybe hold onto the knees as you roll in. Couple more rounds. Inhale, opening up. Exhale, round in. Inhale. Exhale, curl. Once more like this. Inhale. Exhale, maybe the movements are getting a little bigger. Sit up nice and tall, and we're going to do a little similar motion but with a circular pattern as well. So inhale, lean over towards one knee, scoop the heart open as you come across to the other knee, and exhale, round the low back, especially sitting back, completing your circle over to the other side. As you come forward, the chest opens. As you round in, come to the back, curl in a little. Inhale, opening up, leaning forward. Exhale, leaning back, curling in. There's a little engagement of the low belly here, and the weight can be shifting a lot from one foot, one seat to the other. Do a couple more rounds this direction, noticing where you feel the sensation. Let anything you want to happen with the neck that feels good happen. Nice. When it feels like a good time for you, pause, sit up nice and tall for just a moment, and then start to go the other direction. Lean towards the opposite knee, sweep across, exhale, curl in, rolling across the back. Inhale, open, a little more weight in the feet. And as you sit back, more weight into the sit bones, shifting from one side to the other. Several rounds, maybe closing the eyes here. If you have the block in between the legs, a little light squeeze there. Maybe one more round. And then pause, sitting up nice and tall. Just notice if there's any kind of extra ease, length, openness, or awareness in especially the sides of the body, down into the low back, the seat. Take another breath, kind of sitting up, letting the body be in neutral. Nice. And then we're going to start with our shoulder shrugs, alternating. We'll start alternating. They can start really small, the hands sliding on the legs. That can feel really nice. You can almost give yourself a little massage here. At some point, start to make the circles a little bit bigger, the hands coming up off the lap, perhaps turning this into a bigger backstroke. You might follow the hand that's lifting with the eyes. Maybe the eyes closed. Start to make them really big circles. Turn so I don't whack my hand on the chair. Couple more rounds. Any amount of turning of the upper chest to start to get a little twisting action. And slowly start to make the circles a little smaller. You could be breathing nice and deeply in and out of the nose now. Maybe there's a little sound at the back of the throat. Eventually the hands coming back onto the legs. A couple rounds here, sliding the hands up and down, maybe from the hip to the knee. And making those even smaller. And then pause in the center. So we'll do a couple rounds of our half sun salutations. Always welcome to stand up. Inhale, sweeping the arms up and overhead. Exhale, hands come down through the midline, finding the lap and folding over the legs. We'll pause for a couple of breaths in our forward fold. Maybe the forearms come onto the thighs. Maybe you reach the hands down to the ground. Maybe if kind of somewhere in between is the right spot. Since you have this block or a little bit of height today, maybe you take your hands to that instead. And if it's okay on the neck, let the chin fall into the chest. Let the back round in, just like you do in cat pose, just even a little softer, letting gravity pull the spine down, the belly resting on the legs. Three more breaths here on your own. And we're finding this halfway lift from here. So maybe the hands slide up onto the thighs, the palms down, and scoop the heart a little bit forward. It's a little action of that cow shape. And exhale, just find a really mini cat like we did before. And then roll the spine up, find your way seated. Inhale, sweep the arms up. We'll move one breath for movement now. Exhale, hands come down through the center, fold over the legs. Hands may stay on top of the thighs now. Inhale, lifting the heart, pressing it forward, lifting the belly towards the knees, and then exhale, round, hug the belly button in towards the spine. And inhale, sit up nice and tall. Hands might slide up towards the hip points. Inhale, sweep the arms up. Exhale, hands through the midline, fold over the legs. Inhale, scoop forward, cow. Our halfway lift. Exhale, round in, a little cat. Inhale, sit up tall, hands slide up the legs. Twice more like this. Inhale, sweep up. Exhale, fold over the legs. Inhale, scoop the heart forward, squeeze the elbows back behind you. Exhale, round in. Inhale, sit upright. Inhale, sweep the arms up. Exhale, fold over the legs. Inhale, scoop the heart forward. Exhale, round in. Inhale, back up, seated. And exhale. Nice. Go ahead and find your block. Now we're going to hold the block out in front of us. And see if it'd be okay to hold the block in between the forearms. So negotiate your way there and have the palms pressing out in a way, the thumbs in towards each other. And then see what it would be like to lift the elbows up a little higher, maybe in line with the shoulders. And they don't have to come up all the way. Press the elbows away from the shoulders. We do this kind of motion often when we're finding like a wrap of the arms. We'll do it here. So press the forearms into the block if you have the block. If you don't have a block, you're just finding the shape of the arms without it. Palms press out and away. Nice. Stay right there for a couple breaths, pressing into the sides of the block. You'll start to fire up some of the muscles, especially on the sides of the chest, the sides of the ribs. Active through the hands, fingers spreading wide, and the back of the wrist nice and straight. So check in with that as well. And maybe now that you've been here a couple of breaths, maybe you start to hug the elbows up even higher in line with the shoulders, maybe pressing them out and away. Some people will have the space from here to press firmly down into the feet and then start to, from the middle of the sternum, lift the heart up a little higher. Find a little stretch across the front of the abdomen. And then maybe with that, then without really moving the angle of the shoulder in relation to the rib cage, just by lifting the heart center, front of the collarbones, the sternum, you might find this little mini back bend. Still pressing into the blocks on the side with the forearms, press out through the palm of the hands, squeezing the elbows towards each other. Take one more breath here, whatever amount of lift of the elbows, lift of the heart that you have. And quite a lot of work actually. Start to soften the lift of the heart, soften the elbows down. You can let the block come down into the lap. We'll take a nice curling action in. Inhale, sweep the arms up overhead. Bring one arm on top, maybe the right arm, and curl in. You can let yourself curl in a lot over the legs with this hold of the arms. Maybe you give yourself a little massage. Maybe there's a soft sway side to side. Get a little curling in action, a little release for the shoulders. And pressing into the feet, coming up, let the hands slide down the arms. Maybe give the arms a squeeze on the forearms, the wrists, the hands. And then we're going to take the block behind our backs. I'm just going to turn my chair today sideways. Taking the block behind your back, see if you could hold on to the widest width here. And the fingers pointing down towards the seat of the chair, the thumbs pointing in towards your seat, your low back. And there's a soft bend of the elbows. And when we all kind of come into it, there's going to be a tendency for most of us to have our front of our shoulders rolled in quite a lot. So can you actively roll the shoulders back behind you? Maybe that means the elbows point off more towards either side. And maybe they bend a lot more. Maybe you have to sneak the block up a little higher. And that block can be resting on the back, especially if that feels like almost like a nice tactile feedback to lightly press into the block to kind of have some engagement for the low back. And you can either stay right here or start to press the hands, palm of the hand really firmly into the block, keeping the chest open. Try not to let the front of the shoulders roll in. Try to keep the chin lifted lightly away from the chest so it's level with the ground. And pressing into the block will start to engage some interesting muscles in the arms, maybe even in the side of the ribs. And some people will then have a little bit of space and strength, because it does take a lot of strength of these muscles that we don't use that often, to start to lengthen the arms back behind them. And so I'm trembling here. Like, this is a weird activity that we don't often do. And the muscles are a little bit surprised about what's going on. So I'm pressing my palms firmly into the block, my thumbs pointed toward my seat, rest of the fingers point down. I'm letting my elbows come out as wide as I need for my shoulders, keeping the front of the shoulders lifted, pressing into the block, lengthening the arms, pressing into the feet as well. And I'm going to take 2 more breaths. Hope you're still with me. I'm going to slowly soften that press. I'm going to let the block just kind of rest behind me on the seat of the chair. Bring my hands to my lap and just pause there. There's definitely quite an activation feeling in the arms. And then reach your arms up and overhead. Bring the opposite arm on top, maybe the left arm this time. Give yourself that wrap, that hug, and you can round the spine in any amount here. You can sway side to side. Give yourself a little bit of that opposite action instead of opening up, curl in. One more breath here. And slowly roll up. Give the arms a squeeze all the way down the upper arm, onto the forearm, the wrists, and the hands. And then maybe you take your hands somewhere on the edges of the block. Maybe they're on the edges of the seat, maybe even holding on to the back of the chair somewhere. We're going to just open the heart here. Any soft bend of the elbows. Press firmly down into the feet. Press into the feet so much that the muscles on the back of the legs engage. You're actually squeezing your glutes slightly underneath you. There's a little bit of engagement. You'll actually get a little bit of lift as they squeeze underneath you. And start by rolling the shoulders back. Get the spine up a little taller. Sometimes this little wiggle action helps. The chin nice and level. And then from the sternum right here, the spot in between the collarbones, can you lift that lightly up? And maybe then you start to lean a little bit back. Lift the heart. Again, holding on wherever is going to feel good for you. and pressing the belly button lightly forward, but a lot up. So really trying to get length, reaching up. And then from that length, you'll then just be able to lean back a little bit more. Take another breath here, whatever the shape is looking like or feeling like for you. And start to let the chest soften down a little. Sit up taller. Let the hands soften wherever they were pressing back behind you and come back seated, sitting up nice and tall. Our neutral seat. When I say seated, that's what I mean. Okay, and so this we're going to do with the block, and the block is going to act a little bit more like a weight. So if you don't have a block but you're looking for a little bit of weight, go ahead and take the block into one hand, and you can be holding on, see what it's like to hold on to the edges, this kind of short edge here, any way that's going to work for you. And then start with the thumb pointing in towards your hip, and then turn and rotate the thumb to point out and away. So the rest of the fingers, the knuckles are pointing away, the kind of inside of the elbow starting to point straight out and away. And inhale, take the arm up and overhead. And once you're up overhead, make sure the other arm is lifted too. And then transfer the block over to the other way. And palm of the hand and inside of the elbow pointing out and away. The hand comes down by the sides, both hands lower. Inhale, palms face out and away, thumbs mostly point up, reach up overhead, transfer the block to the other side, and exhale, bring the hands down. So do that several times. Inhale, reaching up, transfer whatever you're using as a weight to the other side. Exhale, coming down. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, down. Maybe the gaze is starting to come up. There's a little light buoyancy in the center of the chest. Inhale up. Maybe you see the transfer happening. And exhale, float back down. A couple more times. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Once more, evening out. Coming back down. And now we're going to do, I was taught it as the Statue of Liberty. So you're going to have the block in one hand and it's going to come to the opposite hip. And the palm is facing down. You're kind of touching the root of the thumb to the opposite hip point, the hip crease, the hip joint, whatever you want to, wherever you can reach basically on that side. You can have your other hand on the seat of the chair if you need a little support lifting up. You're going to inhale and this arm's coming up and reaching up overhead. Now the palm's facing out and away. So if I was doing this without, it would be this action of the palm of the hand coming, sliding almost into a pocket over here. And then I'm bringing the elbow out to the side. I'm reaching the fingertips up, the palm facing out and away. We're going to be doing that with the block. So try it a couple times on this side. With the block, you kind of have this weight of the block rotating down. Elbow comes out to the side. And again, you can follow the block and the hand with your gaze. Do it a couple more times here. We're really just looking for mobility in the shoulder, a little bit of some strengthening on the back of the shoulder blade with this exercise. And there's a little drawing out to the side. Nice. Maybe do one more time on this side. Go ahead. This time when you place the block back across the body into that little hip pocket, place it on the lap for a moment. Give the wrists a roll. Any roll. Actually make fists. Squeeze a really tight fist and roll in one direction and roll in the other direction. And then give the fingers a little wiggle too. And hold the block or weight in the opposite hand. Come across the body, the palm facing mostly down towards the ground, thumb close to the hip. Inhale, draw the elbow out to the side, block coming across the body, and then reaching it up nice and tall. And exhale back down, sliding it almost like into a little pocket there. Inhale, reaching up. Opposite hand can be a support on the chair or in the lap. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, coming back down. Inhale, reaching up. Exhale, back down. I didn't count on the other side, quite honestly, so we'll do it twice more here, and we'll see where we are. If you feel like you've gotten even on the two sides already, or you need to do one more, please do that. Do one more here, one more lifting up. And then coming back. And again, block can just rest on the lap. Take your hands, interlace the fingers, whichever thumb you want on top. Clasp here and give the wrists a nice roll. Maybe you keep the elbows relatively close. And then pause and then clasp the opposite thumb on top. It might feel a little bit strange. And then maybe now you take the elbows a little bit further. Keep the palms pretty close together and give a roll. Pause and make sure you go the other direction. That can also feel like pretty strange, and take a moment to figure out. And whatever you did first was your preference. And see if you can challenge yourself on a regular basis. Just switch up your habit, whatever that is. All right, maybe just squeeze the fingers together, palms coming apart. Just give the fingers a little bit of a squeeze here. You're trying to pull the hands apart while you're squeezing all the fingers into each other. All right, we're gonna find our lunge shape. I'll turn my chair back to the side. Go ahead and take your right foot off to the right side of the chair. Come pretty close to the edge, sneaking your left foot back behind you. Maybe the heel is over the ball of the foot. Any bend of this knee. Check that the right ankle is underneath the right knee about. And then you probably will have a tendency to be dropping the low belly towards the right thigh. Can you press into the right foot? Can you engage the low belly? There's a light tucking of the pelvis to bring the torso a little bit more upright. Any amount of dropping of the left knee down towards the ground might accentuate a little bit of stretch here. For some, lengthening the leg will feel better to find that length all the way down, maybe even through the shin. And options here, if you want for this round to take the block in between your hands on the widest width, fingers pointing up. And we're not squeezing onto the block here, we're actually pressing into the block with the palm of the hand. The fingers are just kind of hanging off of the edge. And maybe you take the hands out in line with the shoulders. And then maybe you bring the hands up. If you need to softly bend the elbows, do that, but press into the block with the palm of the hand. And see if you can kind of create a little space for the shoulder blades. So spread the shoulder blades. Maybe that means the elbows point a little bit towards the front, out in front of you. Maybe a little bit more weight pressing on the pinky side of the hand. Take another couple of breaths here. Reaching the hands up nice and high, pressing back through the heel. And if the block is lifted up overhead, start to bring it back out in line with the shoulders, down towards the right leg. Soften the press of the left foot back behind you, and we'll rotate all the way over to the other side. Rotating over to the other side, set up, ankle underneath the left knee, the right foot sneaking back, any bend. Check in, can you press into the left foot? Tuck the pelvis just a little bit, lift the low belly away from the left thigh. Hands, if you want to try this variation of pressing into the sides of the block, coming out in front of you. We'll see if you can lift the inner right thigh back behind you, regardless of whether you're dropping the knee down. And if you're bringing the hands up overhead, bring them up. Press into the pinky side, pointy side of the elbows, pointing the same direction as the left knee. Soften the shoulders away from the ears. Spread on the back of the shoulder blades. Breathe into the back of the lungs. 2 more breaths here. One more. Hand coming back down. Soften the right knee. And we'll head right back over to the first side. So we're going to find our lunge shape again. Find your lunge. If you want to be hovering off the seat of the chair, always a welcome option. Get set up, low belly drawing away. This time you might take the block behind the back, and it can rest right here on the low back, almost kind of on the top of the seat. And fingers point down, thumbs point in towards the body. There can even be a little contact on either side of the block where it meets. And then you're drawing the elbows lightly towards each other. You're pressing the block lightly down towards the ground, lightly forward, and you're pressing the back into the block as well. And maybe on this side now you find a little bit more opening of the heart, lifting right from the breastbone, the sternum, lift it straight up to the sky. And this lifting of the low belly from the right thigh will help with that. Again, anything you want to do with the left knee, having it bent or really pressing back, lifting the left inner thigh. Take another breath here. Maybe soften the left knee, soften the lift of the heart. Hands to help. We'll turn back. One more lunge. Turning back. Set up. Left foot forward. Maybe you're standing. Block behind the back, fingers point down, thumbs maybe resting on either side of where the block is making contact with the body. Press into the left foot. Left seat engages, left glute engages, lift the low belly. Squeeze the elbows. Instead of squeezing the elbows towards each other, you're squeezing the elbows right back behind you, heading towards your right foot. Block can press into the body down and forward, and the body presses back into the block and the heart lifts. Shoulders soften away from the ears. Maybe a light shake of the head to make sure the neck is loose. No extra tension there. Couple more breaths here. Start to soften the lift of the heart, soften the press of the block into the back, into the hands, and we'll head back over to the right foot off the right side. But we're going to find Warrior 2 or Virabhadrasana 2 this time, if that feels okay for you. Your bottom of your left foot is sealing down on the ground. The toes point up towards the right foot. And you just really have to adjust and figure out what's going to be the right spot for you. There might need to be a soft bend of the left knee. Maybe it feels better even to come into a standing shape for this. So you decide. If you come standing and then try to sit back down, make sure you hit your chair. And then the chest is turning away from the right knee. So once you have your legs set up, pressing really firmly back through the outer left heel, lifting the left arch, the chest then turns away from the right knee. So find that turning rotation, maybe the hand on the right inner thigh to help with that, a little leverage. The nose is right over the belly button. Try not to lean too far forward or too far back. Most common for us to lean forward. And you can stay right here. Maybe take the block into the right hand, reach it out the height of the shoulder, and check in with the wrist. See what's going to be best for your wrist in terms of how you're holding the block. Usually trying to find somewhere you can have a flat wrist is going to feel nice. And so just check in to the weight of the block with how you're holding it, that's going to be feasible. And then, what hand is this? My left hand's coming back behind me, the palm face up. We're going to do kind of that flowing Warrior 2. We often do, but with the block. So inhale, reaching the block up and overhead, and exhale, transfer, and the hands come back down. So inhale, the palms may be facing up, reaching up. Can take the gaze up and follow the block. Exhale, coming down. Maybe you're just looking straight out ahead and finding that transfer without looking. Could even close the eyes here. Inhale, reaching up and overhead. Again, the block is acting as a little bit of a weight here, as well as helping with this mobility of opening up the arms, out to either side a couple more times. And check in with the legs. Maybe you got a little lazy. Pressing firmly down into the right foot, lifting the left arch, pressing back through the left outer heel, turning the chest away from the right knee. All right, this time, whenever it's back out in front of the body in the right hand, you can slowly lower the arms back in and see how they feel. Maybe it didn't feel as extreme, but now that the arms are resting, you feel that work. So we'll take a pause here. We'll find our goddess shape. You can place the block down on the ground. So feet probably wider than the hips, maybe wider than the width of the chair. Toes can point out to either side. And you could be doing this standing and hovering as well in a squat. But dip from one side to the other. So bring one shoulder towards the opposite knee. Inhale back through center and then dip over the other side. And you can alternate inhale through center, exhale, dip. If you need to stay on one side because that feels really good on your low back or your shoulder, then do that. Couple more breaths here. Maybe check in that the toes are soft. Maybe lift them, spread them. One more round. So if you need to even out, do that. And then we'll find the block. So we'll bring the block with us. Find our warrior two. The left foot coming off the left side of the chair, the right foot coming back, bottom of the right foot seals on the ground as much as possible, pressing into the pinky side of the right foot, lifting my right arch without trying to squeeze the toes too much. And it can be a little awkward seated on the chair, so you check in. And then you see I'm leaning pretty far over my left thigh. So I'm going to press into the left foot, try to lift away from the left thigh here, get some length, bringing my nose over the belly button, and then turning the chest, twisting the upper spine, really this rib cage area away from the left knee. And then we do this if you want to do this again on this side. So palms maybe face up, block out in the left hand, inhale, reach up, and exhale, coming back down. If you want to do something a little different, you could also bring the block in a complete circle this time, down, and then inhale, sweeping up, exhale, coming down and around in front, and we'll switch up the direction if in a moment if you're making these bigger circles here. If you wanted something a little different, you could also be inhale, reaching up, and then transferring and back down. Nice. One more circle this direction, checking in with the feet, check in with the turn of the chest. Pause with the block out in front in the left hand, and then bring it down. Transfer to the right hand. If you're making these circles, inhale up and exhale back down. Inhale up, transfer, and exhale. Inhale and exhale. One more time. Inhale up. And this time, exhale, hands reach out in your warrior two shape. Bring the hands back in towards the hips. Bend the right knee, and we'll come back out in front. And you can bring the feet in closer this time. Plant the feet firmly down on the ground. Plant the feet firmly and then lift the heels to give the ankles a little release. Just lift any amount, just to roll them. And then lift the heels and then also roll onto the pinky side of the feet. Get a little stretch on the outside of the ankles. And then you might need to take the feet out a little wider. And you can lift the heels, but really lift the pinky side of the feet. And for me, it feels really good to kind of also pull my toes in so the feet are really active, but you check in. And then maybe you take one foot and just give it a nice roll in one direction, a little coming onto the toenail edge, the other direction. Do that with the other foot here. Okay, and then we'll plant the feet firmly down. I'll turn to the side here. We're going to take the block in between our hands, fingers pointed up. And you could do this with like an interlace of the fingers instead if you don't have a block. You're going to bring the block out in front. Bend your elbows just like we did earlier. And you don't have to be pressing super crazy hard into the sides of the block here. I want you to then take the block behind the head. If you need to let the elbows come out wider, please do. But if you can, hug the elbows in towards each other. And I'm finding this flat edge of the block right against the ridge on the back of the skull. So I'm finding like a little shelf with my block right underneath the ridge of the skull, making sure it's relatively comfortable, squeezing the elbows in as much towards each other as you can while keeping the shoulders away from the ears. I'm pressing lightly into the sides of the block with the palm of the hand, but my fingers can kind of wiggle and be a little loose. So this can be a nice big stretch, a big opening. Check in that you're not kind of flaring the ribs too far forward. Can you make sure that the low belly is lifting away from the legs? And then that lift coming right here from the center of the breastbone again. Think of that lifting up, length on the front of the belly instead of dumping and arching the low back. And you keep the low back in its kind of natural curve. And maybe you start to drop the head back onto this shelf you've created. The fingers might curl around the edge of the block just a little bit for some extra support. And the elbows continue to squeeze in. Maybe you let the head rest even more back into this shelf. Lift from the center of the heart. Gaze going up a little to the ceiling. Check in with the shoulders. Check in with the low back. Take a couple of breaths here. And you might experiment to see what it's like to open up the elbows to the side. That can give you a different stretch. Maybe they hug back in and point even further up. Take another couple breaths here. And then you're going to use your hands on the block to help support the head coming upright instead of using the muscles of the neck. As your head comes upright, the chest softens back down. As the head comes more upright, you can start to take the block up to the sky, bring it overhead. Hands can relax in the lap. Just pause there, seated in neutral. Maybe the eyes close. You notice where you feel this shape after. Take another breath here. And we'll find a forward fold, and you might let the block rest here on the lap somewhere as a little extra height so you can fold over. If you'd prefer to take the block down to the ground, do that, but just carefully with any distance that would feel good between the feet to just start to fold over. And maybe that's here with the forearms, the elbows on the legs. Maybe you're draping the body down, letting it cascade towards the ground. Let the shoulders roll in towards each other now. Instead of that big opening, let them soften in. Take a couple more breaths here. Maybe you take a big inhale through the nose, out through the mouth. 3 more breaths. Carefully, hands coming back to the legs to help find your way up to sit. We're going to sit with, you might take the block behind you. We're going to sit so that you're scooted back pretty far in the chair. And the block might be resting right on their sacrum or almost into the small of the back, but the small of the back is up a little bit higher where we have that curve. You really want it on this kind of flat part of the low back where the spine meets the pelvis. It'd probably be a couple inches from the seat of the chair. And adjust if you need to also then place something under the feet because you kind of feel like they're hovering. You could grab, for me, let's just use my little block that I have here, my extra one. Anything else that would add maybe just a little bit of height here. So check in, see if you can get situated so you feel pretty comfortable, and you want to feel pretty supported right here on the sacrum, the low back. And then you can kind of lean back into that support. So you're sitting upright with just a little bit of extra support here. And we're not sitting all the way back in the seat of the chair, so you have that space behind the shoulder blades. And we'll do some neck stretches here. So let the left ear fall towards the left shoulder. Maybe you take the right hand and reach it off to the side. Maybe you take the left hand and bring it on top of the head, adding a little bit of weight, but not pulling down. You might also like to take your right hand to the block that's behind you, somewhere, and kind of holding on there. You can play around too and get some interesting stretches in the forearm and the wrist, the fingers, if you adjust. I have my fingers pointing off towards the left and my fingers on top of the block, my thumb towards the back of the chair, and it's giving an interesting stretch from especially my pinky down my wrist into my forearm, in addition to the stretch on the right side of the neck. Can you let the left ear be a little heavier towards the left shoulder? Let the left shoulder be heavy towards the ground. This could be a really nice place to close the eyes. Take 2 more breaths here. You have the left hand on top of the head. Bring the hand back into the lap. Slowly release the right hand. Bring it back into the lap. Bring the chin towards the collarbone and down towards the center of the chest. Just let it rest there for a moment. And then slowly roll the right ear towards the right shoulder. The chin lifting away from the ground. Get a nice, good stretch through the left side of the neck. Just by this weight, feel the weight of the skull. And then if you want, the right hand can come on top, right above the left ear. The left fingers could reach out to the side. Maybe they sneak behind the back somewhere onto the block. Maybe it looks a little different on this side. If you want to try what I was doing, the first side, the thumb is pointed towards the seat of the chair, the palms down, fingers point off to the left. It's on top of the block. And then I'm drawing the left shoulder down to the ground. The left elbow is heavy. The right ear is heavy. The right shoulder is heavy. The right elbow is heavy. Couple more breaths. Slowly release the right hand from the top of the head if it was there. Keep the right ear towards the right shoulders. The hands come back into the lap, and then the chin rolls down into the center of the chest. Rest it there. You might like to interlace the hands behind the head. Add a little light weight right on the ridge of the skull again, right where you had that little shelf before. And then hands slide off the back of the head if they're there. Maybe they come to frame the face as you lift the head back up. The hands relax down in the lap. And any last little rolls of the shoulder that you need. We're going to do a little breathing exercise here. So make sure that you're pretty comfortable with the feet planted down, support behind the low back. If you need to change that and take a different seat, then please do. See if it's okay to close the eyes and check in with the breath. Notice how long the inhalation is. Notice how long the exhalation is. Take another breath in and another breath out. And this time breathe in halfway. So take a half of your inhale and then take the other half of your inhale and a full breath out. So we'll do that a couple times. Take half of your inhale, the other half, your last sip, and a big full exhale. So we're dividing the breath here. So big inhale halfway. Finish your inhale. Big breath out. A couple more times like this. Half of your inhale, the second half. Big breath out. And if you need to breathe normally instead, please do that. Half of your inhale. Pause and second half. Full exhale. Maybe out the mouth. First half of your inhale. Pause and second half. Full exhale. Once more like this. First half of your inhale. Second half. Full breath out. Full breath in. Full breath out. Full breath in. One more full breath out. Full inhale, and then we're going to divide the exhales. So breathe in. Breathe out halfway. Pause and breathe out the other half. Inhale. Breathe out half. Pause. Empty out. Inhale. Exhale half. The second half. Inhale. Breathe out half. Pause and empty out. Pull the belly button in. A couple more times. Inhale. First half of exhale. Second half. Full inhale. Half of the exhale. Pause. Second half of your exhale. One more inhale. One more exhale like this. Halfway. Pause. Second half. Big inhale. Full exhale now. Full inhale. Full exhale. Full inhale. Full exhale. And maybe you're continuing with these really deep breaths, or maybe you're letting the breath soften just a little bit more. Notice what that was like. Check in. Oftentimes there is a preference for breaking up the inhale or breaking up the exhalation. And that can tell us a little something about our mood or where we're at today or generally. The inhale is associated more with activity, action, and the exhale more with relaxation, softening. We need both. Sometimes that breath can help to balance. It Take another couple of breaths here. You might bring your hands to heart center. You might lightly bow the head into your heart, thanking yourself and each other. Others are doing this practice too. A thanks and gratitude for taking the time to move, to breathe, to connect, to pay attention. I thank you so much for joining. You can lift the head, the eyes open if they haven't. Thank you so, so much. It was wonderful. Hope you're feeling a little lightness and opening in the shoulders, maybe across the front of the heart. If you need anything, let me know. I'm Emily. Be well.